Καλησπέρα και καλώς ήρθατε σε άλλη μια λέξη εκφραστικής ανάγνωσης εν μέσω κορονοϊού 2022. Enid Blyton, The Valley of Adventure. Up in Bill's aeroplane. Kiki the parrot was annoyed. She had been left all alone for a day, and she talked angrily to herself. What a pity, what a pity, what a pity, poor, poor Polly. Ding-dong bell, Polly's down the well. Good morning, good morning. Mrs. Mannering put her head in at the door of the room where Kiki was sitting. Kiki, don't be so absurd. Talking away to yourself all day like that. The children will soon be back. Ding-dong bell, said Kiki mournfully, and made a cracking noise with her beak. I suppose you missed Jack, said Mrs. Mannering, coming into the room and shutting the door carefully behind her. He won't be long now, Kiki. You'll hear him and the others any minute. Now be a good bird and don't make any more noise. Kiki opened her beak, swelled up her throat, and gave her famous imitation of an express train screeching on entering a tunnel. Mrs. Mannering put her hands to her ears. Naughty, Kiki, naughty! How many times have we told you not to do that? How many times have I told you to shut the door, shut the door, shut the door? Answered back Kiki, and ruffled up her feathers so cheekily that Mrs. Mannering gave her a tap on her beak. Funny old bird, she said. Ah, listen, that sounds like the children coming back. They've been up in an aeroplane, Kiki. Fancy that. That's why you had to be left all alone all day. Jack, 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 screamed Kiki, hearing the voice of her owner. 4 children burst into the room, their faces red with excitement. Hello, all of you, said Mrs. Mannering. How did you like it? Was it fun being so high up in the air? Oh, Mother, it was the greatest fun in the world. Aunt Allie, I shall buy an aeroplane of my own as soon as I'm grown up. Mother, you ought to have come. Bill piloted the plane and he was marvellous. I wasn't airsick, Aunt Allie, though Bill gave me a paper bag to be sick in. Mrs. Mannering laughed. All the 4 spoke at once, and she had hard work to make out what they said. Kiki gave a loving screech and flew to Jack's shoulder. The 4 children sank into chairs and prepared to relate their day's adventure. There were Philip and Dinah, Mrs. Mannering's children, dark-eyed, dark-haired, just as she was, and both with tufts of hair that insisted on sticking up in front. Both Dinah and Philip were called Tufty at school. Then there were the other 2, Jack and Lucy-Ann, brother and sister, who had no mother and father and lived with Aunt Allie, as they called Mrs. Mannering. All 4 were like one family. Jack and Lucy-Ann Trent were very alike. They both had red hair and green eyes, and were so covered with freckles that it was quite impossible to find a bit of pink skin on their faces, arms or legs. It was not surprising that Jack was so often called Freckles. Kiki the parrot belonged to him. He had had her for years, an amusing and talkative parrot, with a gift for repeating anything she heard and for imitating any noise, from a sewing machine to an express train. She adored Jack and was miserable when she was not with him. Jack had a passion for birds, and Philip had a great liking for animals of all kinds. He was wonderfully good with them, and they obeyed him and loved him in a marvellous manner. He always had some kind of unusual pet about him, which caused quarrels between him and his sister Dinah, who was scared of most animals and of nearly all insects. But now all 4 were thinking of nothing whatever but their glorious flight in their friend Bill's new airplane. Bill Smuggs was their firm friend. He and they had had hair-raising adventures together. In one adventure they had gone down old copper mines to track clever forgers. In another they had happened on a nest of dangerous spies. As Bill Smuggs said, those children simply fell into adventures. Now Bill had actually been presented with a fine aeroplane to help him in his work. The children had been wild with excitement when he had written to tell them this at school. I bet he'll take us up for a flight, said Jack. I just bet he will. We'll make him, said Philip. But they didn't need to make him, for he was quite willing to show off his aeroplane to them and to demonstrate how well he could fly it after only a short training. Mother, we went far higher than the clouds, said Dinah. I looked down on them and they didn't look like clouds a bit. They looked like a great big snowfield. It gave me quite a funny feeling. I had a parachute strapped to me in case I fell, and Bill showed me the ripcord I had to pull in case of danger, said Lucy-Ann, the youngest, her eyes shining. But there wasn't any danger. We flew right over our old home, Craggy Tops, said Philip. It was so strange looking down on top of it. And we flew over here too, Mother, and our house looked like a toy one. Aunt Ally, Bill says it's frightfully exciting flying at night and seeing the little pinpricks of lights shining up from the dark countryside, said Jack. We begged and begged him to take us on a night flight, but he said he would have to ask you. You will say we can go, won't you? Golly, I can't imagine what the boys at school will say when I tell them about going up in a private plane day and night. Day and night, repeated Kiki. Ding dong bell. She's not Ding Dong Bell on the brain, said Jack. There's a small child next door who keeps reciting nursery rhymes, and Kiki listens and picks up bits of them. Yesterday she kept moaning about 3 blind mice. Today it's Ding Dong Bell. Don't know what it will be tomorrow. Humpy Dumpy, said Kiki obligingly. Humpty Dumpty, corrected Jack, not Humpy Dumpy. Humpy Dumpy Bumpy, said Kiki solemnly, and scratched her head with a claw. Humpy Dumpy, all right, said Jack. Aunt Ally, can we go up at night with Bill? He's coming to ask you tomorrow, so do say yes. I suppose I shall have to, said Mrs. Mannering with a laugh. You and Bill. So long as you don't go headlong into another awful adventure. Adventures aren't awful, said Philip. They are simply lovely. Not to the people who aren't in them, said Mrs. Mannering. I feel quite ill sometimes when I think of the adventures you children have had. No more, please. All right, we won't get into any more of these summer holidays, said Lucy-Anne, giving her aunt a hug. We won't worry you. I don't want any more adventures anyhow. I've had enough. Well, if we do have another, we'll leave you out of it, Lucy-Anne, said Dinah scornfully. No, we won't, said Philip, giving Dinah a poke in the back. We can't do without Lucy-Anne. Now, don't quarrel, you two, said Mrs. Mannering, foreseeing one of their everlasting squabbles boiling up. You're tired now, all of you, after such a lot of excitement. Go and do something quiet till supper time. Sing for your supper, put in Kiki. The children laughed. You're an idiot, Kiki, said Jack affectionately. Did you miss us today? Well, I was scared you might fly out of the aeroplane in fright if we took you. But I expect you to have been quite a sensible old bird, wouldn't you, and sat on my shoulder all the time? Kiki pecked lovingly at Jack's ear and made a crooning noise. She sat as close to him as she could. The children began to talk about their exciting day. Wasn't it lovely going to the aerodrome and getting in on our passes and walking up to Bill just as if we were grown-ups, said Philip. And golly, wasn't Bill's airplane fine? I didn't think it would be so big, said Lucy-Anne. You know, it was funny. I sort of held my breath when we started off, thinking I'd get a funny feeling when we left the ground like I do in a lift, and I never even knew when the wheels left the runway and we were in the air. I got quite a shock when I looked down and saw we were over the housetops. It seemed awfully easy to fly a plane, said Jack. Easier than driving a car. I wish Bill would let me have a shot. Well, he won't, said Philip. I say, wasn't it odd when we got into the air pocket and the plane suddenly dropped down without warning? My tummy sort of went up into my throat. The others laughed. Mine did too, said Lucy-Anne. I'm glad I wasn't sick. It was a waste of that nice strong paper bag, but I'm glad I felt all right. We went hundreds of miles, I should think, said Jack. I felt a bit funny when we were over at sea. It looked so enormous and so flat. I shouldn't like to fall out over that. What a splash! I bet Mother will say we can go on a night flight with Bill, said Dinah. I could see in her face that she was going to say yes. If only we could. Bill said we could fly to his old home, land at dawn, and spend the rest of the night with him, sleeping all we liked in his two spare rooms. We needn't get up till 12 if we didn't want to. Fancy flying all night and going to bed at dawn. Then we'd fly back in the afternoon, I suppose, said Jack. Gosh, I'm glad we've got Bill for a friend. I do think he's an exciting sort of person. It's thrilling, too, to know that he's always on some sort of secret job and never says a word about it, always snooping out some deadly secret. I wonder if he's on any job now. You bet he is, said Philip. That's why he's got this airplane. May have to take off at any moment after spies or somebody. Hope I'm with him when he does. Well, you won't be, said Dinah. Bill would never run us into danger. I shouldn't mind if he did, said Philip. Hello, there's the gong for supper. I'm jolly hungry. That's nothing new, said Dinah. Come on, let's go and see what there is. Smells like bacon and eggs. They went to their supper. They were all hungry and finished up the eggs and bacon and plum cake in no time. Kiki helped herself to the plum cake too, till Mrs. Mannering protested. Jack, will you stop Kiki picking all the raisins out of that cake? Look at the mess she's making. There won't be any cake left soon. Smack her on her beak. Naughty Kiki, said Jack and tapped her on her beak. Don't eat it all. How many times have I told, began Kiki, but Jack was too tired to talk to her. Don't argue, he said. I'm so sleepy, I'll have to go to bed. Everyone felt the same, so off they went, and were soon asleep and dreaming of flying aeroplanes over the clouds, somersaulting and looping the loop in a most amazing but perfectly safe manner. Bill gets his way. Bill came along to lunch the next day. He had a ruddy face, twinkling eyes, and a rather bald head with plenty of hair at each side. The children rushed to meet him. Mrs. Mannering smiled at him. You gave the children a wonderful time yesterday, she said, and now I hear that you want to take them on a night flight. I can't think why you want to bother yourself with a pack of children like these. You never know when they're going to embark on some wonderful adventure, said Bill Smuggs, grinning round at them. I don't want to be left out of it, you know. Besides, I feel sorry for you, Mrs. Mannering, having to put up with them for 8 or 9 weeks these summer holidays. I thought it would be a kind deed if I took them off your hands for a while. Well, what do you want them to do? Asked Mrs. Mannering. Just go for a night flight, spend the night at your old home and come back the next day? That was the first idea I had, said Bill. But now I hear I'm due to have 3 or 4 days off, and I thought maybe you could spare the children for longer? We could fly to my old home and then stay there and mess about a bit. There are heaps of wild birds for Jack to see, and I have no doubt that Philip will find plenty of even wilder animals. The girls will enjoy the change too. Oh, it does sound good, cried Jack, and the others agreed. Mrs. Mannering listened and thought for a moment. Yes, I don't see why they shouldn't go with you, Bill. I know you'll look after them all right and see that they don't get mixed up in any awful adventure again. I can promise you that, said Bill. There are no adventures to be found anywhere near my old home. It's a most peaceful, quiet place. Nothing doing at all. Well, if you promise not to rush into danger or trouble, you can go, said Mrs. Mannering to the delighted children. When do you want them, Bill? Tomorrow, if possible, said Bill. The job I am on seems to be hanging fire at the moment, so I might as well take my few days now. What's the job, Bill? Do tell us, begged Lucy Ann. Bill laughed. I couldn't possibly tell, he said. All my work is secret, you know that. I'll tell you all about the job when it's over and done with, though. You'll find it jolly interesting. We'll have to pack suitcases, won't we? Said Dinah. If we're going to stay a few days, I mean, we may want a change of clothes, and Max. Yes, bring jerseys and shorts to mess about in, said Bill, and Max too, because it always seems to rain at my home. And Mrs. Mannering, could you spare a few rugs, as I may not have quite enough blankets for so many visitors? Of course, said Mrs. Mannering. I'll look some out for you. I'll bring my lovely camera, said Jack. There'll be room for odds and ends like that in the plane, won't there, Bill? Plenty, said Bill. Bring your field glasses too, because you may want to have a squint at the different birds in the hills around. Oh, it will be exciting, said Jack, his eyes shining at the thought. I can't wait till tomorrow. Let's go today. The plane's not ready, said Bill. Got to have something done to her today? Anyway, my leave doesn't start till tomorrow. You get everything packed and ready and come to the aerodrome tomorrow night. Be there at 11 o'clock sharp. I'll order a car to call for you and take you there. What a time to start on a journey, said Mrs. Mannering. I don't know that I altogether like it. You can't change your mind now, you can't, cried the children. No, I won't, said Mrs. Mannering. But somehow I don't feel very easy in my mind about it all. Oh, children, you won't go and do anything dangerous, will you? There's nothing dangerous for them to do, said Bill. I'll look after them all right. Anyone doing anything dangerous will be sent back to you, Mrs. Mannering. The children laughed. Then Jack's face fell. I say, what about Kiki? She wouldn't like me being away for some days. Can I take her with me? What about the plane? Will she be all right in it? You'd better put her into a basket or something, said Bill. She might get scared at the noise and fly off. She'll be all right in a basket on your knee. We can't leave her behind. Right, said Jack, pleased. Do you hear that, Kiki, old bird? You're to travel in a basket. And mind you behave yourself. Wipe your feet, said Kiki. Put the kettle on. Poor Polly. Idiot, said Jack and scratched her paw. All I hope is that you don't try to imitate the noise an aeroplane makes. Your express train screech is bad enough. They all had a pleasant lunch, and then Bill departed. The children went upstairs to put together their things. Diana put a whole packet of chocolate into her case, in case there were no shops at Bill's home. Jack stuffed a packet of biscuits into his case. He often woke up at night and liked a biscuit to nibble them. "Better take plenty of films with you, Jack, if you're thinking of photographing birds," said Philip. "I bet there won't be anywhere to buy them where Bill lives. It's somewhere buried right down in the country." Mrs. Mannering came up to see what they were packing. It was a cold August, with rather a lot of rain, and the children would need a fair amount of warm things. They had put in pullovers and jerseys and Macs and Suesters. She added rubber boots too, thinking that shoes would not be of much use if they walked over wet fields. "I found you some rugs," she said. "You can each take one. They are old, but very thick and warm, and as good as 2 blankets. If Bill hasn't enough blankets for you, it won't matter at all. The rugs will give you plenty of warmth. Don't forget to bring them back now." Jack got his camera ready. He looked out his rolls of films. He debated whether or not to take one of his bird books with him, and then decided not to, because his suitcase was already very heavy. "Everything's done now, Aunt Ellie," said Lucy-Ann, sitting on her suitcase to make it shut. "I wish tomorrow would hurry up and come. Fancy flying in the dark in Bill's plane. I never in my life thought I would do that. I hope it's a long, long way to Bill's home." "It is," said Mrs. Mannering. "Now, let me see. I'd better pack you sandwiches and cake to take with you for the journey, because you are sure to be hungry if you stay up all night. I'll do this tomorrow. Have you found a basket for Kiki, Jack? And what about taking some food for her? There's a new packet of sunflower seeds come today. Put it into your suitcase." Jack found a good basket for Kiki with a lid that closed down. He put it on the table. Kiki flew over to it at once in curiosity. She hopped inside and looked out comically. "Clever bird," said Jack. "You know it's your travelling basket, don't you?" "God save the Queen," said Kiki, and began to rub her curved beak up and down the edge of the basket. "Don't do that," said Jack. "You'll break it. Stop it, Kiki." Kiki climbed out and flew to Jack's shoulder. She rubbed her beak against his hair. "Ding-dong bell," she murmured. "Polly's in the well. Ding-dong bell." "Polly's in the basket, you mean," said Lucy-Ann. "Kiki, you're going in an aeroplane. Think of that." The day went slowly, far too slowly for the children. The next day was even slower. By the time that tea time came, the children felt that night would never come. But when supper time came, they felt more cheerful. The car was coming at 10:15 to take them to the aerodrome. Then into the plane they would get with Bill, and off they would go into the darkness. Somehow it seemed far more thrilling to fly through the dark night than through the sunshiny day. 10 o'clock struck. The suitcases and rugs were taken down to the hall. Jack's camera was there too, and a large packet of sandwiches and cakes. Jack wore his field glasses on a strap over his shoulder. Kiki's basket was in the hall also, but Kiki was still free. She was not going into the basket till the last moment. "Here's the car!" cried Philip, his sharp ears hearing the engine purring up to the door. "Come along. Goodbye, Mother. Look after yourself well till we come back." "Goodbye, Aunt Ellie," said Jack, giving her a hug. "We'll send you a postcard. Hi, Kiki, come on. It's time you got into your basket." Kiki made a bit of a fuss going in. She was excited because of the excitement of the 4 children. It took quite a time to get her into the basket and shut the lid down. She began to shout at the top of her voice. Poor Polly, down the well, up the hill, in the corner." "She's mixing up Ding Dong Bell and Jack and Jill and Jack Horner," said Lucy-Ann with a giggle. "Be quiet, Kiki. You ought to be glad you're coming with us, even if you have to travel in a shut basket." All the goodbyes were said. "I don't like letting you go somehow," said Mrs. Mannering. "It's silly of me, but I don't. I've got an uncomfortable feeling, as if you're going off into another dreadful adventure." "We promised not to," said Philip earnestly. "Don't you worry, Mother. We'll be all right, and you'll see us turning up like bad pennies in a few days' time. Anyway, Bill's on the phone and you can always ring him." The taxi revved up its engine. It moved off down the drive with Mrs. Mannering left standing at the door, waving. The children waved back, excited. They were really off. "Now for the aerodrome," said Philip, pleased. "I thought tonight would never come. What's the time? Oh, we're early. Good. Got the passes, Jack?" "Diana's got them in her bag," said Jack. Diana fished them out. They were passes that would take them into the aerodrome and up to Bill himself. It was a good way to the aerodrome. The night was very dark. Clouds covered the sky and a few drops of rain spattered the windscreen. "Here's the aerodrome at last," cried Jack, seeing the lights through the window. "Look at the flare path, all lit up. Isn't it fine? Don't the aeroplanes look enormous in the shadows at each side? Here, Dinah, where are the passes? We've got to show them now." The passes were shown to the man at the entrance to the aerodrome, and the children went in. "I'll set you down here and you can speak to your friend," said the taxi man. "Then I'll run on to his aeroplane and dump the luggage beside it for you. So long." "Now we'll find Bill," said Philip as the car drove off. "There he is. Look. Hi, Bill. We're here." A grave mistake. Bill was talking to 3 or 4 men very earnestly. He waved to the children, a tall, burly shadow in the night. "Hello, kids. I'm busy for a few minutes. You cut along to the aeroplane and wait for me. Stow your cases in at the back where mine is. I'll be about 10 minutes or so." "Right, Bill," said Jack, and the 4 of them moved off to where the taxi man had put their cases, beside an aeroplane not very far away. It was dark where the aeroplane stood, but the children could see enough to pick up their cases. They climbed up the ladder and into the cabin. The inside of the plane was in darkness. The children had no idea how to put the lights on. They felt their way to the back of the plane and put down their things. They threw their rugs there too. Jack put Kiki's basket down carefully. Kiki had been most indignant all the way. Humpy Dumpy Bumpy," she said. "Pop goes the weasel." There was a large crate in the middle of the plane. The children wondered what was in it. Was it empty or full? It must be something Bill was taking back with him. "It's blocking up all the inside," said Jack. "We can't sit down properly with that thing there. Let's squat down on our rugs at the back. We'll be quite comfortable there. Perhaps Bill will shift the crate a bit when he comes and tell us where he wants us to sit." So they sat down patiently on their rugs and waited. The noise of the plane's engines went on, and it was impossible to hear anything else, though once Jack thought he could hear somebody shouting. He went to the door and looked out, but all was darkness, and Bill was nowhere to be seen. What a time he was! He went back to his place, yawning. Lucy-Anne was half asleep. "I wish Bill would come," said Philip. "I shall go to sleep if he doesn't." Then a lot of things happened very quickly indeed. Over and above the sound of the engine came the sound of shots, gunshots. That made the children sit up in a hurry. Then another shot sounded, and then there came the noise of someone clambering hurriedly up the steps into the plane, and a man flung himself down in the control seat. Another followed, panting, hardly to be seen in the darkness. The children sat as if they were frozen. What in the world was happening? Was one of them in Bill? Who was the other? And what was the hurry? The first man took the controls of the plane, and to the children's amazement it began to taxi forwards. They were off. But why hadn't Bill spoken to them? Why hadn't he at least looked round to see that they were safely inside? "Keep quiet," said Jack to the others. "If Bill doesn't want to speak to us, there's a reason. Maybe he doesn't want the other fellow to know we're here. Keep quiet." The plane rose into the air, its propellers making a great whirring noise. It headed swiftly into the night. The men shouted to one another, but the children could not make out what they were saying because the noise of the engine was so loud. They sat quiet and still, hidden from view by the big crate standing in the middle of the plane. Bill said nothing to them at all. He didn't call out to know if they were there. He didn't send his companion along to see if they were all right. He simply took no notice of them at all. It was very queer, and Lucy-Anne didn't like it a bit. One of the men fiddled about and found a switch. He pulled it down and a light shone out just by the men, but the rest of the plane was still in darkness. Philip peeped round the crate, meaning to catch Bill's eye if he could. Almost at once he came back to the others and sat down very quietly. He said nothing. "What's up?" asked Jack, sensing that Philip was worried. "You go and look around that crate," said Philip. "Have a good look at the 2 men." Jack went and peered round. He came back feeling puzzled and scared. "Neither of those men is Bill," he said. "Golly, it's funny." "What do you mean?" said Lucy-Anne in alarm. "One must be Bill. Why, this is Bill's aeroplane." "Yes, but is it?" said Dinah suddenly. "Look where the light catches those seats, Lucy-Anne. They are red, and the ones in Bill's plane were green. I remember them quite well." "So they were," said Jack, remembering too. "Golly, we're in the wrong plane." There was a long silence. Nobody knew what to think about it. They were in the wrong plane. Not Bill's at all. 2 strange men sat at the controls, men who would probably be extremely angry when they found their unexpected passengers. Neither Jack nor Philip liked the look of the men in the least. They had really only seen the backs of their heads and the side face of the man when he had turned to shout to his companion, but neither of the boys had felt drawn to the 2 men. They've got such thick necks, thought Jack. Oh gosh, this is awful. And there were those shots too. Were they anything to do with these men? They clambered into the plane in a frightful hurry and set off at once. I do believe we've stumbled into an adventure again. Philip spoke cautiously to the others. It was no good whispering, because whispers couldn't possibly be heard, so Philip had to speak loudly and trust that he would not be heard by the men in front. What are we going to do? We have got into the wrong plane. That's the fault of that stupid taxi man putting down our things by the wrong aeroplane. It was so dark that we ourselves couldn't possibly tell which plane was which. Lucy-Anne sat close to Jack, frightened. It wasn't very nice to be high up in the air, lost in the darkness, in the wrong plane, in the wrong aeroplane, with men that none of them had seen before. What can we do? Wondered Jack. We really are in a mess. Honestly, those two men won't half be mad when they see us. They might tip us out, said Lucy-Anne in alarm. And we haven't got parachutes on. Jack, don't let them know we're here. They'll have to know sooner or later, said Dinah. What idiots we are, getting into the wrong plane. I never thought of that. There was a silence again, with everyone thinking very hard. Shall we just stay here at the back of the plane on our rugs and hope we shan't be noticed? Said Philip. Then, when we arrive somewhere, maybe we can slip out of the plane and look for help. Yes, that's the best idea, said Jack. We are well hidden here, unless the men come round to the back for something. Maybe they will arrive at their destination, get out without seeing us, and then we can slip out ourselves and ask for help to get back home. I did want to stay with Bill, said Lucy-Anne, almost in tears. Whatever will he be thinking? Goodness knows, said Jack gloomily. He'll be hunting all over the aerodrome for us. You know, I believe that must have been Bill I heard shouting when I went to the door to see. He must have gone to his own plane, found we weren't there and yelled for us. Dash! If only I'd guessed that. Well, it's too late now, said Philip. I hope Mother won't be worried. Oh dear, she'll think we've fallen headlong into another adventure. And we promised not to. The aeroplane roared on through the dark night. The children had no idea whether they were flying north, south, east or west. Then Jack remembered his pocket compass and took it out. We're flying east, he said. I wonder where we're going to. I don't somehow feel as if I'm in a plane at all, as I can't look out and see the ground far below. The others felt the same. Lucy-Anne lay down on the rugs and yawned. I'm going to sleep, she said. I shall only feel frightened and worried if I keep awake. It's a good idea of yours, said Philip, and he stretched himself out on the rugs too. We shall be sure to wake up if we arrive anywhere. Anyone want a sandwich or a bit of cake? Asked Dinah, remembering the picnic packet. But nobody did. The shock of finding themselves in the wrong aeroplane had taken away their appetites completely. Soon all of them but Jack were asleep. He lay awake, thinking hard. Had Bill been mixed up in the shooting they had heard? Were these two men anything to do with the job Bill had been working on, the secret job? It might be just possible that Jack and the others might find out something that would help Bill. It was important not to let the two men know that they had some hidden passengers in their plane. Kiki gave an exasperated screech in her basket. Jack jumped. He had forgotten Kiki. He tapped the basket and spoke in as low a voice as she could, hoping that Kiki would hear him. Shut up, Kiki! Don't make a noise, whatever you do. It's very important to be quiet. You hear me, Kiki? You must be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet, repeated Kiki from inside the basket. Shh. Jack couldn't help smiling. Yes, he said, putting his face close to the basket. Shh. Kiki was quiet after that. She was a mischievous, noisy bird, but she would always be quiet if Jack wanted her to be. So she sat inside her basket, trying to tuck her head under her wing and to go to sleep. But the loud sound of the plane's engine upset her. She had never heard such a noise before. She longed to imitate it, but fortunately she didn't try just then. After a bit, the two men changed places and the second one took over the controls. The first one yawned and stretched. He got up and Jack's heart almost stopped beating in fright. Was he going to come to the back of the plane? He wondered whether or not to wake the others. But the man did not come to the back. He stood up for a few minutes as if to stretch his legs, then lighted a pipe. Blue smoke drifted to the back of the cabin. Jack was most relieved to see the man sit down again. The boy soon grew sleepy too. He lay down close to the others, quite glad of his coat, for it was very cold. Soon he was asleep. Only Kiki kept awake, cracking her beak now and again, puzzled and wondering what this strange night adventure meant. The plane flew on in darkness, passing over towns and villages, fields, rivers and woods. It passed over the sea to where the lights of ships shone dimly. Lights of the towns twinkled up, and here and there the flare path of an aerodrome shone up to the sky. But the plane did not fly down. It swept over them all, heading east to the dawn. Then, just before dawn, it began to circle round more slowly. It dropped as it circled, and once banked so steeply that the children almost rolled over. It awoke them, and they sat up, wondering where they were. They remembered at once and looked at one another with wide eyes. "We're going to land. Where shall we find we are? Look out for a quick escape as soon as we get the chance," they whispered to one another. "Down we go. We are landing." Calabrà.